Hey TBE fam, it's Jimmy. Hey, have you ever been really passionate about something or someone, and then as time goes on, you're just, for whatever reason, not so passionate about that thing or about that person as you once were? Well, what do you do when that person is God and you're just not as passionate for whatever reason as you once were? Well, that's what I talk about in this message. And I did it a little different. It's just me sitting in my living room with my iPhone 11, and I recorded this message just for you. I hope you enjoy it. Right now, I'm going to be preaching from this Bible. This is Aiden's Bible. The reason I'm doing that is because I can't find my Bible. I lost it, and I know that's, I'm a preacher. I shouldn't be losing my Bible and stuff, but I don't know where it is right now, so I need some prayer. Need you to help me find it. But so I'm going to use Aiden's orange Bible. It was just sitting in his closet at the bottom of his closet. So I think the real question we need to ask ourselves is, Aiden says he's saved. Why doesn't he have his Bible with him at all times? So that's the big question here, right? So that's why that's good parenting right there. Deflect on your kid, to get your attention off you. But no, seriously, I have a problem with losing things, so I need some prayer. But anyways, I want to talk to you about passion, and there's something that I've been passionate about, and to tell you the story, I want you to go back in time with me to when I was 16 years old, and of course, I was super cool and hip and all that stuff. But I drove a 1985 Dodge Charger. Now, I know that you hear Dodge Charger and you think, oh, that's a pretty cool car. Yeah, not in 1985. A Dodge Charger was not a cool car. It was just this small little compact car. I mean, it was ugly. Nobody thought it was cool or anything. So there's a few years where Dodge just decided to make the Charger not so cool, I guess. But anyways, that's what I had. I was driving that. I was 16 years old, and I was passionate about something. And I know what you're thinking. Not girls. That's not where I'm going. Okay, so get your mind out of the gutter. But no, I was passionate about wrestling. I loved wrestling. I had posters on my wall of like the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake and all that. And I had tons of magazines. I was obsessed with wrestling. And at that time, there was two wrestling federations. The one was WWF, which is now they call WWE. And the other one was WCW. And they were on two separate networks, and they were battling against each other. And the WWF was coming to the Civic Center, the Fort Pierce Civic Center. If you've been in Fort Pierce for a while, you remember back when the Civic Center was there. And wrestling didn't come too often to Fort Pierce, but the WWF was coming to Fort Pierce. And my buddy Chris and I, we had tickets, not just any tickets. We had front row seats to WWF wrestling. Now, around that time, my favorite wrestler who was wrestling in WCW, his name was the Nature Boy Ric Flair. If you don't know who Ric Flair is, you probably just need to stop watching this. Just turn it off. This message will not resonate with you. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't turn it off, okay? No, I'm not going to talk about Ric Flair the whole time. But the Nature Boy Ric Flair, he had just left WCW. He signed with WWF. And when his contract ran out with WCW, he was the heavyweight champion of the world. So what happened is Ric Flair still had the belt, and he came onto WWF on Monday Night Raw, and he was wearing the WCW Heavyweight Championship. And I was like going crazy. I was like freaking out. There's WCW's belt on WWF, and ended up being a big lawsuit, and WCW sued WWF. And they had to blur out the belt for a little bit, and then WCW got their belt back. And I really feel like I have a feeling that you're not really getting this. Like you're just not getting this whole story. You're not seeing it play out. So I got something to help you. Okay, I want to help you out. I want you to get this. Okay, so I got this. Now this is a replica. This isn't the actual belt, all right? If you want to get me the actual belt, I'd love to have, I don't know how to get it, but this is a replica of the WCW Championship belt that Ric Flair had when he first appeared on WWF. All right, I wanted this belt for years. I wanted this belt since I was 11 years old. 2 years ago, my sisters got together, my family got together, and they got me this belt for Christmas. And back when I was 16, or back from 11 on, this belt was on the cover of, or the back cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and it was like $2,000. It's not $2,000 now. You can get it a lot cheaper. But I've wanted this belt. I wanted it for like 30 years and finally got it. So I have a chance to show it to you, and I'm gonna show this thing off. All right. This is the actual. It's like the same weight and size of that belt. This belt was the championship belt for NWA, which was then bought by Ted Turner. He turned it to WCW, and then it became the championship belt on WCW, wore by Ric Flair. So, anyways, just wanted to show you that, help you with the story. So, anyways, Ric Flair's with WWF, okay? And they're coming. We're 1 week out from the WWF coming to Fort Pierce, Florida. And they announced it on primetime TV. They announced that Ric Flair was going to be there in Fort Pierce. Now, I was freaking out. My favorite wrestler is coming. I wasn't even expecting him to be there. And Ric Flair was coming to WWF. Now, or to coming to Fort Pierce. Now, my buddy Chris and I, now, listen, to this day, I have no idea why we thought this was funny. But for some reason, for that whole week, we would make jokes like, we'd be like, hey, what would you do if Ric Flair pulled up right now? Hey, what would you do if Ric Flair came up in his limousine and he said, hey, boys, get in, let me take you to the Civic Center. We would just do stuff like that, and we just laugh and laugh. I mean, like I said, I really don't know why we thought that was funny, but we did. So, here it comes. It's Friday night, the night of wrestling. We get out of school. We go over to Chris's dad's. He had a business. He owned an auction company. And we hung out there for a little bit. And we were hungry, so we went across the street to Subway. Now, Subway, now where Subway was, is Pursuity Subs. But at the time, it was Subway. And we went in there, and I was ordering my sub. And just nonchalantly, just like he did like 100 times that week, Chris looks out the window and he says, there's Ric Flair right there. Now I giggled. I just kind of looked out. I did a little laugh, and I looked out the window, and sure enough, there was the Nature Boy Ric Flair, 6-time world champion, getting out of a white Cadillac. Now, I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but there was a few seconds there where I blacked out. Like I just, I saw nothing. I just saw black. Luckily, I did not end up on the floor. I probably came really close to it, but I gathered myself together. Ric Flair walked into Subway. Now, I don't know how this happened, but somehow Ric Flair got in front of us and he was ordering his sub. I don't really remember if we let him go in front of us, or if he just was like, hey, I'm world champion Ric Flair. I don't know how the former lead of the Four Horsemen got in front of us, but he did, okay? And what I do remember is, as he was standing there, I was trying to talk to him. Like, words were in my mind, but they just wouldn't come out of my mouth. Like, I was trying to say stuff, and it just wasn't coming out. And finally, I was able to muster up 4 words, and they were, man, you're Ric Flair. That's what I said. Man, you're Ric Flair. Like, he didn't know who he was, And I remember he just looked at me and he said, yeah. That's all he said. Now, my buddy Chris, he was able to talk to him. And what he said, hey, Rick, hey, we're going to the Fort Pierce Civic Center too. Like Ric Flair was like, oh man, that's the reason I came to Fort Pierce. I was hoping Chris and Jimmy were going to be there, but no, he didn't say anything. And he got his sub, and as he was walking out the door, I was able to say something else, and I said, see you later, Mr. Flair. He turned around and he looked at me and he said, see you later, pal. And he left. So, of course, Chris and I, we were ecstatic. We were beside ourselves, and we couldn't wait to get to wrestling. So we were there, and we were sitting in the front row because we were huge wrestling fans. And about midway through the show, Ric Flair comes out. Now, he's not wrestling that night, but he's just doing an interview. And he comes out and he does an interview, and I'll never forget, the guy behind me, he was probably like in his mid-40s, okay? When Ric Flair came out and got into the ring, this dude, he took off his shirt, all right? And he was covered with hair. It looked like he was wearing a sweater afterwards, after he took off his shirt. But he took off his shirt and he started slinging it above his head, and he kept going, woo, woo, woo. And if you know anything about Ric Flair, that is like his signature phrase, going, woo. And that's what he did. So this guy was just, this 40-something-year-old man was doing that behind me. And I remember thinking, man, Jimmy, you're doing pretty good. You're holding it together compared to that guy. And so Ric Flair, he gave his interview, and I remember, I don't really remember what he said. I don't remember what Ric Flair said in his interview, but I do remember at the end of it, he said, and if you don't believe me, and he walked over to the end of the ropes, right in front of where we were, and he leaned over the ropes, and he goes, if you don't believe me, you can just ask my good friends right there. And he pointed at Chris and myself. Now, listen, I'm not proud of this. All right, I am not proud of what happened next, but I absolutely lost my mind. All right, I yelled out, "I'm Ric Flair's friend!" I turned around, I high-fived the dude without a shirt on, and I just kept going, woo! Woo! With the guy behind me. We just kept, woo! Woo! So that, I couldn't help it, okay? There's nothing else I could have done. I could not have prevented that from happening, okay? So that it just happened. It just came out. I didn't think about it. But I think that you could easily say that I was passionate about wrestling. Now, that was when I was 16. Now I'm 41 years old. I have not watched wrestling for 20 years. I have not watched wrestling since I was 21 years old. So I think it's fair to say that my passion for wrestling has decreased. All right? It's not the same. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what happens when our passion decreases. And I don't want to just talk about our passion for just for anyone or for any object, but have you ever had your passion decrease, or you've lost your passion a little bit for God? Now, I know this isn't popular, okay? This isn't something that you just want to go around talking about, saying, hey, I lost my passion for God. It's not something that we talk about a lot, okay? But it happens, right? Like, you hear people say, man, after I first got saved, I was on fire for God, but man, now I don't want to leave the house. Like, I just want to be with my dogs and my cats, I don't really want to be around people. Yeah, you ever heard anybody say that? Have you ever said that? I know I've said something similar. And, maybe you don't want to just come out and admit that you're not as passionate about God as you used to be. But let me ask you this. Have you ever lost passion for people? Have you ever just lost passion of wanting to help people? And then I want to ask you, what does God love more than anything? It's people, right? So if you're going to love God, then you're going to love what God loves. Now, I know if I go to my wife, Julie, and I go to her and I say, hey, baby, I love you. I love you with all my heart, but I just don't love anything that you love. Then she's going to go, I don't think so. It's not going to go down like that. And I'm going to be like, yeah, you're right. You're right. So if you love someone, you're going to love what they love, right? So if we love God, we're going to love people. So maybe you don't want to admit that you're not as passionate about God, but maybe you're not as passionate about people. But that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about passion. And I wanted to tell you this. If you are in that category, maybe you're not as passionate about God as you once were, I want to tell you that we are in good company. Because I want to read this. John chapter 20, verse 19, 21. It says, then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in the midst and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he said this, he showed them his hands and he showed them his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. So Jesus said again, "Peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you." So just to give you a little content here, of a little context of what's going on, Jesus had now died, all right? It is now the night of the third day. He had predicted his death. He had predicted his burial. He had predicted his resurrection, okay? And on the night of the third day, his followers are left and they are terrified. Now, reading this, if I'm just, a bystander reading this, I'm thinking, Jesus has predicted all this stuff. He told them what was going to happen. You would think, man, those disciples, they should have been out in the streets telling people, yeah, he may be in the tomb right now, but you just wait till the third day. They should have been out telling everybody about this, you would think, But instead, they were locked in a room and they were terrified and they were scared and they were afraid. And you think, why? Why is that? I would even go so far to say at this point, the disciples and his followers there was some doubt going on, right? I mean, you would think so. Yes, they've been following Jesus around for 3.5 years. Their life has just been flipped upside down. And they're thinking, man, what have I seen? Maybe they're starting to doubt even what they saw. Maybe they're like, did he really turn the water into wine? Was Lazarus really dead? Was all this just a magic trick? Did this really happen? I think it'd be safe to say that there was some doubt going on in the disciples' mind right now. They were questioning some things. So I want us to research a little bit about why we lose our passion and why the disciples lost their passion. And I want to see what happens, because in this story, as soon as Jesus walks into the room, they go from being scared, being afraid, being terrified, and the Bible says they were glad. Listen, this is a place in the Bible where the English word does not do the original Greek justice, okay? I mean, you are glad when you get your Amazon package on time. It's crazy. They can do overnight shipping, 1-day shipping. It's insane. I mean, you're glad though, when it's 2-for-1 appetizers at Applebee's, right? I mean, you're glad about that. Yeah, the disciples were not just glad, all right? They were ecstatic. They could not believe. I mean, they went crazy, kind of like I did when Ric Flair said that I was his friend. I mean, they were excited. I mean, they just went from being terrified and fearing death to feeling electric and excited. And how they must have felt, the only thing I can maybe relate it to a little bit is you ever watched a horror movie? Now listen, I hate horror movies, okay? If you come up and you say, hey, Jimmy, you want to go see this horror movie? That's where our conversation is going to end. It's already going to be no, I'm not going to go to it. But when I was younger, okay, I was persuaded a few times by my friends to go to some horror movies, and they were terrible, okay? But in those, I remember, there would be the main character, and they thought they were going to die, and this person thing was coming to kill them, and then at the last minute, they were saved. And I'm thinking, man, that's how the disciples must have been. It was like they were living a real-life horror movie. And this guy that they've been following is now dead. They just beat him, hung him on the cross, put him in a tomb. And now they're fearing their lives, thinking that they're going to come after them. And then all of a sudden, Jesus just walks in. And they realize he did it. He beat death. So saying they're glad is understatement of the year. They were ecstatic that Jesus had just walked in that room. But why? What happened? What's the difference? I mean, Jesus told them this was going to happen. So what killed their passion? What did that? Well, at first I started looking up relationships. I wanted to do a little research on relationships. And it was already done for me. They've already done the research, and it takes from the time that you fall in love with somebody, okay? It takes 20 months. All right, 20 months from the time when you fall in love with someone and that passion at its height, 20 months for that passion to decrease to the point where you start noticing the little things that you overlooked before. Like, you fall in love with someone and you're just like, man, baby, I love to watch you eat. I could sit here for hours and just watch you eat, And then you fast forward 20 months later, all right, you're sitting at Chili's and you hear this god-awful noise and it's coming from across the table, and it's that person that you love, and there's like food falling out of their mouth. They're eating with their mouth wide open, and you're like, why do you eat like that? Why must you eat like that? And they're like, I thought you loved the way I eat, and just food falling out of their mouth. So they say it takes about 20 months, all right, for you to pick up on those little things, to recognize those little things. So maybe that happens a little bit. Maybe, after 20 months, you got to kind of start reminding yourself why you fell in love with that person. Sometimes I think that happens to all of us. We get saved, we're on fire for God, and then some time passes, and you're like, man, nobody's noticing what I'm doing. I get in here early, church, I clean up afterwards. I straighten up, like I'm the only one helping. Nobody else is helping. Nobody has said anything about all this help I'm giving. And maybe somebody makes you mad. Maybe they park in your parking spot or whatever they do. And you're just like, man, I don't even want to go to church anymore. And we start focusing on the things that it's not even really about. So I think it's important when we get there, one, we remind ourselves, where did God bring us from? Why are we actually doing this? I think that's important as well. But I do want you to notice right now, as the disciples are in this room before Jesus walks in, I want you to ask, or I want to ask you actually, do they still have the teachings of Jesus? As they're in this locked room, do they still have all the things that Jesus has taught them? Well, of course they do, right? Yeah, absolutely. They go on to record it later on, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Mark writes Peter's side of the story. And so, yeah, of course they have the teaching still, all right? So how about this? Do they still have the principles? Well, yeah, of course. They still have the principles. If they have the teachings, they have the principles, right? So what is it? What is it that they are lacking? Can I suggest this? For the first time in 3.5 years, the one thing that they did not have was the person. They did not have the person. They still had the teachings. They still had the principles, but they did not have the person. They were without Jesus for the first time in 3.5 years. And all of a sudden, they're scared, they're terrified, and they're fearful of their lives. But as soon as Jesus walks in, their passion, just like that, comes back. Just like that, they get their passion back, and they are excited. They are electric. They are passionate about Christ. Proof of it is 40 days later after this happened. They were on the day of Pentecost when 3,000 people were added to the church. Now, if you take that was back then. If you compare that to now and the population now, that would be like 3 million people added to the church right now. That'd be like us going out, all of us going out and reaching 3 million people. It's crazy, right? It's pretty amazing. 3 million people. And I want to remind you that this was before the New Testament. The New Testament wasn't even written yet. So this was all just word of mouth, and 3 million people were added, or 3,000, which would be 3 million now, were added to the church. Listen, that does not happen with people that are not passionate about God. That's not going to happen. They were passionate. But here in this text, before Jesus walked in, their passion had gone. It was gone. They didn't have it. What changed? It was when Jesus walked in the room. Jesus walks in and boom, just like that, they have their passion back when Jesus walks in. So I want you to notice what Jesus says to them after he walks in. He walks into the room through the locked door. He don't say, hey guys, listen up. Get your pens and paper ready. I'm going to give you the 4 keys to effective evangelism. Let's write them down right now. 4 keys to effective evangelism. Get them out. He didn't say, hey guys, I want to talk to you about the 7 principles to live a Christian life. Write these down. No, he didn't do that. Jesus walked in and he said, hey guys, hey, we've talked about this before, right? Like you knew this was going to happen. It's like, hey, just so you know that it's me, look, feel my hands. Look at my side. Jesus knew that it wasn't about the teachings and it wasn't about the principles. And I'm not talking against teachings and principles. They're great. The teachings and principles are good. The stories and what's written in this book are amazing. But they're only good if they point us to the person. If they point us to Jesus. Hey guys, did you enjoy the message? Do you feel extremely passionate right now? Did it remind you a little bit of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Okay, maybe not. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the message. Listen, if you want to get a hold of us, you need prayer, give us a call, 772-888-1258, or email us at info.tbe.church. If you'd like to know more about the Blueprint Experience, check us out at www.tbe.church. Hope to see you soon.